My name is Emily, I'm 32, and I work as a marketing specialist at an advertising firm in Seattle. For the past 8 years, I've been married to Ethan, a 34-year-old software engineer. Our marriage has been filled with love, laughter, and the kind of quiet stability I once thought was unshakable. Yet, like a shadow that refuses to fade, there has always been one constant source of strain: my sister-in-law, Sophia. She's 36, a driven banker with sharp ambitions, but behind her polished exterior lingers a cloud of negativity that seeps into every family gathering. When I first met Sophia at Ethan's parents' house in Tacoma, I was charmed. Her smile was radiant, her conversations magnetic, and I truly believed we could be close. But over time, the mask slipped. I began to see a different side of her, calculating, manipulative, and always seeking to control the narrative. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The beginning of conflict. When I first married Ethan, I thought the hardest part of adjusting to married life would be balancing our careers and carving out time for each other. I was wrong. The real struggle began long before our wedding, when Sophia, my sister-in-law, decided she knew better than anyone who Ethan should love. Back when Ethan was 18, he briefly dated Mia, one of Sophia's closest friends. It was a typical teenage romance, short-lived, fragile, and more about exploration than any lasting bond. But to Sophia, that relationship carried weight. She pressured Ethan to continue with Mia, insisting that he owed it to her friend. Ethan, who had always been gentle but quietly firm when it mattered, ended things. He told Sophia he couldn't stay in something that felt more like an obligation than a choice. That didn't sit well with her. Not long after, Sophia tried to set him up with another friend, pushing the idea that she knew who was good enough for him. Ethan refused again, and that refusal lit a fire in her. She stormed to their parents, Richard and Linda, complaining bitterly that she wanted Ethan to marry someone she could approve of. But their parents brushed it aside. They weren't interested in meddling with Ethan's choices. They raised their children to be independent, and when I eventually came into Ethan's life, they welcomed me with warmth and support. Sophia was different. From the beginning, there was a chill in her demeanor whenever I was near. She never said anything overtly cruel at first, but she always found subtle ways to remind me that she didn't accept me. She would bring up Mia in casual conversations, always when I was present, as though to stir memories Ethan had long buried. At a family dinner in Tacoma, she even invited Mia without telling anyone. She acted as though it were an innocent coincidence, smiling sweetly as though nothing were amiss, but I felt her eyes on me, gauging my reaction. I tried to laugh it off, but inside it stung. As time passed, her tactics grew bolder. She followed my Instagram obsessively, always the first to watch my stories. If someone left me a comment, whether it was a friend or a colleague, she would run to Ethan and accuse me of flaunting myself online or behaving improperly. Ethan and I usually laughed about it, shaking our heads at her absurdity, but laughter couldn't erase the sting. Words have a way of burrowing deep, and even when you know they're unfair, they can gnaw at your sense of security. Climax before the wedding. The real explosion came when Ethan and I got engaged. It should have been a time of joy, but Sophia turned it into a battlefield. At our engagement dinner, held at a cozy restaurant in downtown Seattle, the room was filled with applause and congratulations when Ethan announced the news. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and I remember clutching Ethan's hand, feeling overwhelmed with happiness. But Sophia sat there, stone-faced. Then, without a word, she stood up and walked out. The room fell silent. Later that night, Ethan told me she had called him in tears, raging that she should have been the first to know because she was the most important woman in his life. The implication was clear, more important than me. Soon after, I received a text from her. It wasn't congratulations, it was a warning. She wrote that I had better treat Ethan well, lacing her words with an edge that felt almost threatening. I didn't respond, partly out of shock, partly out of exhaustion. Every interaction with her felt like a trap. Silence, I thought, was my safest choice. But to Sophia, silence was fuel. From that point on, she inserted herself into every detail of the wedding preparations. When I went dress shopping in Bellevue with my bridesmaids, she tagged along uninvited. As I stood in front of the mirror, wearing a gown that made me feel beautiful, she tilted her head, smirked, and remarked that my taste was unsophisticated. Her tone was syrupy, but her words were a knife. Planning the centerpieces became another battlefield. I sat with Ethan's mother, Linda, flipping through catalogs and discussing flower arrangements, only for Sophia to interject with a mocking laugh. "That looks cheap," she said. "Ethan deserves something better." It was a pattern. No matter what I chose, she found a way to demean it. I held my tongue for as long as I could. But one afternoon, during yet another heated discussion, I snapped. My voice cracked as I shouted that she was no longer welcome at our wedding. The room went still. Sophia's eyes widened, as though she couldn't believe I had dared to stand up to her. For a moment, I felt guilty. Had I crossed a line? But then Ethan's mother, usually the peacekeeper, spoke up. She sided with me. Ethan himself, calm but resolute, told Sophia she would not be invited unless she apologized. Days later, a text arrived from her. It was an apology in form, but not in spirit. Cold, clipped, and begrudging, it was the kind of message you send when you're forced to, not when you mean it. I didn't answer. I was drained, too weary to keep playing her game. The wedding day. Despite everything, Sophia showed up. She arrived dressed in a long black gown, complete with a veil that looked more suited for a funeral than a wedding. When I saw her, my stomach twisted. It was deliberate, her way of casting a shadow over my day. Throughout the reception, she wandered from table to table, whispering to guests that she had lost her brother because of me. I watched her corner people, saw the pitying looks they gave her, and I burned with embarrassment. My wedding day was supposed to be sacred, but she was turning it into a stage for her drama. Ethan, protective as always, confronted her. He asked her to stop, to show respect, but she refused. "I can wear whatever I want," she argued, her voice carrying across the room. "Emily is just too controlling." In the end, Richard and Linda had to step in. They pulled her aside and firmly asked her to leave. The room buzzed with whispers as she stormed out, her veil trailing like a dark ribbon behind her. I stood frozen, torn between relief and humiliation. Part of me wanted to cry, but another part of me felt strangely vindicated. Everyone had seen her for who she truly was. That night, as Ethan and I danced under the twinkle lights, I tried to focus on the warmth of his hands, the laughter of our friends, the love surrounding us. But a small part of me couldn't shake the bitterness. Sophia had succeeded in stealing a piece of our joy. Reflection. Looking back, I sometimes wonder why Sophia needed to cling so tightly to Ethan's choices. Was it insecurity, jealousy, or simply her nature to control? Whatever the reason, she forced me to confront truths I hadn't wanted to face. That not every family bond is nurturing, and not every relationship can be mended with patience. In the months after our wedding, I resolved to stop letting her define my peace. Her words still echoed sometimes, but I reminded myself that Ethan chose me, not out of obligation, not because of anyone else's approval, but because we loved each other. And no black dress, no whispered rumor could erase that. After the wedding and the birth of our son, after the disaster at our wedding, I decided that cutting Sophia out of my life was the only way forward. I stopped answering her texts, unfollowed her on social media, and refused to attend any family gathering where she might appear. For months, the silence was liberating. It was like stepping out of a storm into calm air, even if that calm was fragile. When our son Noah was born 5 years ago, everything changed. Becoming a mother reshaped my entire world: sleepless nights, endless feedings, tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Ethan and I had never felt so bonded, so protective of this small life entrusted to us. From the moment I held Noah, I knew one thing with certainty: I didn't want Sophia anywhere near him. Sophia had a history of weaponizing relationships, and the thought of her influence around my child made me shudder. I told Ethan firmly, no visits, no playdates, no babysitting. He agreed, though I could sense the conflict in him. She was still his sister after all, and family ties are complicated. But life has a way of softening edges. We knew Sophia had once miscarried a baby with her ex-boyfriend Michael, a real estate agent she had dated for years. Ethan and I pitied her, and over time our resolve began to weaken. When she asked to meet Noah, claiming she wanted to be an aunt, we cautiously agreed. First, she seemed sincere, cooing at Noah, bringing him toys, taking endless photos as though she had found new purpose. But it didn't last. The same old Sophia resurfaced. She began using her visits as therapy sessions, unloading her complaints about everyone in her life, her boss, her friends, even her neighbors. Nothing was ever her fault. The world simply conspired against her. I listened politely, but inside I was seething. My living room wasn't a confessional. When Sophia eventually got engaged to Michael, I thought maybe marriage would ground her. But in true Sophia fashion, she managed to twist even that into an insult. She didn't invite Ethan and me to the wedding, telling Ethan directly that my presence might ruin her big day. Her reasoning? Because at my wedding, she had been humiliated for wearing black. It was as though she had rewritten the entire history, painting herself as the victim. I told Ethan plainly, "She's manipulating you again. She always does this." For once, he didn't argue. He decided he wouldn't go, and he certainly wouldn't contribute financially, though Sophia had hinted heavily about needing help. When she found out, she broke down in tears, calling Ethan late at night, begging him not to abandon her. Against my better judgment, I watched as Ethan softened. In the end, we went. The wedding itself was surprisingly smooth, almost anticlimactic. Sophia looked radiant, Michael looked stiff, and for a brief moment I wondered if I had misjudged her. Maybe she had turned a corner. But 6 months later, she showed up unannounced at our doorstep, suitcase in hand, saying her marriage was falling apart. She stayed for several days, filling our house with complaints about Michael. She criticized his work ethic, his spending, even his appearance. It was suffocating. Worse, she began intruding into our routines, making sly comments about my habits. One morning, she noticed me packing my work clothes into a gym bag. It was a simple time saver. I'd work out before heading to the office. But Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Why would you change at the gym?" she asked, voice dripping with suspicion. I brushed it off, but her tone left me uneasy. Her suspicion didn't end there. At a family lunch not long after, Linda was telling a story about a neighbor's messy divorce caused by infidelity. Out of nowhere, Sophia turned to Ethan and asked if we had signed a prenup. When Ethan calmly said no, she smirked and remarked that maybe he should reconsider given my suspicious gym habits. Table fell silent. Then she delivered the cruelest blow. A joke, though it wasn't funny, that Noah might not even be Ethan's child because he didn't look much like him. My heart dropped into my stomach. Ethan's chair screeched as he stood, his face red with fury. "How dare you?" he shouted. "You don't get to insult my wife or my son. You don't deserve to be a mother yourself until you learn how to respect family." Sophia burst into tears, running off to the bathroom. Michael sat frozen, eyes on his plate, saying nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know about their marriage. After that day, Ethan and I agreed, no more. We cut ties completely. For an entire year, we didn't hear from her. The tragedy at the birthday party. Life began to settle. I focused on my work, Ethan on his, and Noah grew into a lively, curious little boy who filled our days with laughter and messes. Then, 2 months ago, something unexpected happened. I found out I was pregnant again. It wasn't planned, but when I saw the faint pink lines, my heart swelled with joy and fear all at once. We decided to keep the news close, waiting for the right moment to tell everyone. That moment came on Ethan's 34th birthday. His parents hosted a garden party at their Tacoma home. The yard was strung with fairy lights, tables lined with food, and Noah ran barefoot across the grass, chasing bubbles. I felt light, almost giddy, knowing that soon we'd share our secret. Sophia wasn't invited. At least not directly. But she showed up anyway. She swept in with her usual dramatic flair, hugging Ethan as though no time had passed. She apologized for everything, the fights, the accusations, the distance. She claimed she was in therapy, working on herself. I didn't believe her, but for Ethan's sake, I forced a smile. Keeping the peace felt easier than igniting another war. The evening went well. Ethan gave a speech, thanking his parents, his friends, and finally me. When he announced that we were expecting again, the crowd erupted in cheers. Linda cried, Richard clapped Ethan on the back, and Noah shouted, "I'm going to be a big brother!" For a moment, everything was perfect. Everything except Sophia. She stood off to the side, her arms crossed, her expression sour. When our eyes met, she quickly turned away. I braced myself, expecting her to cause a scene. But instead, she approached me later, balancing a plate of food. "I wanted to serve you myself," she said softly, "to show you I'm really trying." On the plate were shrimp skewers. My stomach clenched. Shrimp is my most severe allergy, something everyone in the family knows. I smiled tightly and said, "Thank you, but I'll get something else." Moments later, Michael appeared, cheerful and unsuspecting. He congratulated me warmly and noticed the untouched plate. "You don't like shrimp?" he asked. I explained quickly, embarrassed, that Sophia must have forgotten my allergy. "I'll take it," he said with a laugh, reaching for the skewer. 5 minutes later, chaos erupted. Michael turned pale, clutching his throat, gagging. He vomited violently, collapsed onto the grass. Guests screamed. Someone called 911. Ethan knelt beside him while Sophia shrieked his name. I froze, the plate still in my hand. The food had been meant for me. When paramedics rushed Michael away, Sophia turned on me, her eyes blazing. "Did you give him that plate?" she demanded. I nodded, trembling. "I didn't eat it, I told him he could." Her face twisted. "So, this is your fault." I nearly collapsed under the weight of her accusation. The truth was unbearable. If I had taken even one bite, it might have been me lying unconscious in that ambulance. And not just me, my unborn baby, the life I carried so delicately inside. That night, as we sat in the sterile glow of the hospital waiting room, I felt the edges of my world unravel. Michael survived, but the doctors confirmed it had been food poisoning. I should have felt relief, but all I could feel was terror. The dish had been handed to me deliberately, and I couldn't shake the chilling thought. What if it hadn't been an accident? The horrifying truth and its aftermath. My hands trembled as I recounted everything to Ethan and his parents. The room seemed colder than usual, the silence heavy as my words filled the air. I could still taste the fear in my mouth, my chest tightening with every breath. Ethan immediately pulled me closer, his arm wrapped tightly around my shoulders, as if he feared I might break apart before his eyes. When his father insisted on checking the security cameras, I felt a lump form in my throat. Part of me dreaded confirmation, yet another part of me longed for clarity. The footage showed Sophia deliberately slipping the plate of shrimp onto my side of the table. First, it seemed like nothing more than a cruel attempt to mock my allergy, but the investigation revealed something far darker. police were called without hesitation. Their stern presence filled the house, and the investigation moved quickly. What they uncovered shook me to my core. Sophia hadn't only tried to trigger my allergy, she had laced the dish with rat poison. The revelation hit me like ice water down my spine. I had narrowly escaped death, not just a hospital visit. My stomach twisted as I realized Michael, who had unknowingly eaten the plate, had become the unintended victim. Michael's face, pale and weak in the hospital bed, haunted me every night. He had been rushed into emergency care, and while the doctors managed to stabilize him, the sight of him fighting for breath replayed in my head endlessly. Guilt gnawed at me because I was the one who had passed him the plate. No matter how many times Ethan or Michael himself told me it wasn't my fault, my mind refused to let go of the weight. Sophia was arrested and, under the crushing pressure of evidence, confessed in court. Her reasoning was sickening. She admitted she had been consumed by jealousy the moment Ethan and I announced our pregnancy. She too was pregnant and had planned to reveal it that same evening. To her, my announcement had stolen the spotlight, and in a moment of envy twisted into malice, she wanted me humiliated. Her plan had spiraled into something far more dangerous than she had anticipated, and Michael had paid the price. The courtroom atmosphere was suffocating when she stood before the judge, her voice quivering yet coldly detached. Her eyes flicked toward me once, but I couldn't hold her gaze. I couldn't look at the woman who had once been part of family dinners, who had shared laughter across the same table, and now sat shackled, her child growing inside her even as she admitted to trying to harm me. Sophia was sentenced to prison for intentional poisoning and causing serious harm. The weight of justice brought no real relief. It was necessary, but it didn't erase the nightmares. Michael, though recovering, carried both physical and emotional scars. Once he was strong enough, he filed for divorce, severing ties with Sophia completely. In a way, he seemed lighter after that, more at peace despite everything. He visited us often, becoming a steady presence. Sitting in our living room one evening, he said softly, "This isn't your fault. Don't carry that burden." His words were kind, but my chest still ached with regret. I had handed him the very plate that almost ended his life. That image would never leave me. Sophia attempted to reach out from prison, begging her parents for forgiveness, pleading for help with appeals, citing her pregnancy as a reason for mercy. But Ethan's parents stood firm. They refused to enable her, reminding her that every action has consequences. "Being pregnant doesn't erase what you did," her father told her coldly, and those words cut through the last remnants of sympathy I had once felt. The journey of healing and the ending. Months later, life brought both pain and joy in equal measure. I gave birth to our daughter, Lily, a beautiful baby girl whose very first cry filled me with a renewed sense of hope. Holding her tiny frame in my arms, I felt a love so pure it washed away some of the lingering darkness. Noah adored his little sister, often sitting beside me to stroke her soft hair, whispering secrets into her tiny ears. Ethan, true to his promise, stood by me through sleepless nights, through every tear and every smile. Yet, healing wasn't linear. The fear of being poisoned lingered in me like a shadow. For weeks after Sophia's sentencing, I found myself unable to eat without checking every bite twice. I avoided certain dishes altogether, my chest tightening at the smell of shrimp or any food I hadn't prepared myself. Trauma had sunk its claws deep. At Ethan's gentle urging, I began therapy. My therapist's office became a sanctuary, a place where I could voice my fears without judgment. Slowly, through tears and reflection, I began to peel away the layers of terror. I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened, but about reclaiming my sense of safety, of trust in the world around me. Ethan's parents and my own family stood by us unwaveringly. They became the net that caught us when memories threatened to drag us down. Family dinners, once tinged with dread, slowly became warm again. Michael often joined us, and his resilience inspired me. Watching him rebuild his life reminded me that we could all rise from the ashes of betrayal. Sophia remained in prison, her letters unanswered, her voice silenced in our lives. I had no desire to see her, no strength to reopen wounds. Perhaps one day I might think of her with pity rather than rage, but for now, distance was my only shield. As I rocked Lily to sleep one evening, her small hand curled around my finger, I realized something profound. The scars of the past would always remain, etched into who I was. But they did not define me. What defined me was the love I had chosen to nurture, the family I had fought to protect, and the resilience that carried me forward. Life had tested us with cruelty, jealousy, and near tragedy, but we had emerged stronger, bound tighter by love and loyalty. Looking around at Ethan, Noah, and baby Lily, I knew with certainty the future was ours to build, brighter and stronger than anything Sophia had tried to destroy. 5 lessons I learned from the darkness. When I look back on everything that happened, the poisoning, the betrayal, the trial, and the healing, there are moments when I still shiver. But life, even in its cruelest disguise, has a strange way of teaching us truths we wouldn't otherwise discover. If you're listening to my story now, maybe you've walked through your own storms, or maybe you're still in the middle of one. Either way, I want to share with you the 5 most important lessons I learned, hoping they might bring light to your path. Lesson 1. Trust is fragile, but your intuition is powerful. I ignored the small warning signs with Sophia because I wanted to believe in family unity. I dismissed my instincts, brushing aside the uneasy feeling in my chest. Looking back, I wish I had trusted myself more. Sometimes that quiet voice inside us is trying to protect us. If something feels off, don't silence it just to keep the peace. Lesson 2. Love will carry you when strength fails. In my weakest moments, Ethan held me. My parents cooked for me, Michael reassured me, Noah kissed my cheek and whispered that I was safe. I didn't stand alone in that darkness. Their love was the bridge that carried me across the abyss. If you're hurting, let the people who care for you hold you up. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Lesson 3. Healing takes time, and that's okay. For weeks, I couldn't eat without fear. Every plate felt like a test of survival. But healing isn't about snapping your fingers and being fine again. It's a slow walk, sometimes forward, sometimes back. Therapy taught me that it's okay to take time. It's okay to stumble. What matters is that you keep moving one step at a time. Lesson 4. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. People often say forgiveness sets you free, and that's true. But forgiving Sophia doesn't mean I need to let her back into my life. I can choose peace without opening the door again. Forgiveness, I realized, is not for her, it's for me, so that I can live without bitterness poisoning my days. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. Lesson 5. Even from pain, beauty can grow. Out of betrayal came resilience. Out of fear came courage. Out of tragedy came Lily, my daughter, a symbol of new beginnings. Life doesn't erase scars, but it can give us reasons to smile again. Pain carves space in us, and sometimes that space is exactly where joy decides to settle. So, if you're still listening, take these lessons with you. Trust yourself. Let love hold you. Be patient with your healing. Forgive on your own terms. And believe that beauty can still be born from brokenness. My story is not just about what Sophia did or how close I came to losing everything. It's about how, despite the darkness, my family and I built a brighter future. And if I could rise from that nightmarish dinner table, so can you, no matter what storm you're facing. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing stories of resilience, love, and survival. And who knows, maybe the lesson you take today will be the one that saves you tomorrow.